Laura? Okay, we are checking if there is any issue that we sent a link that it is not working, because we are a bit worried that nobody connected yet. Sorry for that.
No problem, no problem.
That's why Laura disconnected right now. Sorry, we had sent the wrong link. That's why people were not connecting. They are connecting now.
Yep, I see that they're now entering.
Yeah. So we are going to start in 2-3 minutes.
Muy buenos días a todos los que estáis conectados y estáis conectando. Soy Laura García desde Extenda Sevilla. Soy la responsable de la oficina de Alemania en el departamento de área de promoción, desarrollo de mercado y red exterior de Extenda. ¿Vale? Vamos a ir comenzando. La sesión está siendo grabada y, por tanto, bueno, todavía queda alguna que otra empresa, pero debido a este pequeño retraso que hemos tenido, vamos a dar comienzo. Bueno, estamos hoy aquí para celebrar el Webinario de Oportunidades en el mercado de Smart Cities, que será impartido por el señor Thomas Müller, socio fundador de la consultora Smart City, que cuenta con una experiencia contrastada en el sector. El objetivo del mismo, bueno, es profundizar en los proyectos que recientemente han sido aprobados por el gobierno alemán, así como darnos a conocer las expectativas de evolución del sector en los próximos años. Disculpadme que no había conectado la cámara. Un momentito para saludaros por lo menos. Bueno, nos acompaña también nuestra compañera Raquel Rodríguez de la oficina de Alemania, ella es la analista de la oficina, y contamos con una inscripción de unas 20 empresas en el webinario. Ahora mismo estamos 11 empresas conectadas. La acción se enmarca dentro o forma parte de los servicios que desde Extenda hemos puesto en marcha ante la situación excepcional, ¿no?, creada por la expansión del COVID-19 y sobre todo con el objetivo de continuar dando un servicio de apoyo a las empresas en materia de internacionalización. De este modo, pues desde Extenda, como empresa pública dependiente de la Consejería de Presidencia, pues continuamos activos adecuando todos nuestros servicios posibles al ámbito digital y ofreciendo nuevos instrumentos y servicios a las empresas como parte de una estrategia vehiculada a través de lo que conocemos como el programa Activa Internacional. Igualmente, pues Extenda ha establecido una tarifa plana súper reducida para todas aquellas acciones que se desarrollen hasta el 30 de junio de 2021, de forma que la cuota en las ferias sería de 1.000 euros y del resto de actividades pues de 100 euros, ¿no? Independientemente de aquellas que sean gratuitas como la que nos encontramos hoy, ¿no? El objetivo principal es que, bueno, pues que ninguna empresa renuncie a desarrollar acciones de internacionalización por el coste que éstas suponen, ¿no? Dadas las circunstancias actuales y basada en el uso de las nuevas tecnologías y canales digitales, hemos adaptado al modo online servicios de promoción como las agendas individuales o como, bueno, todos los programas de consultoría con los que cuenta la casa, ¿no? También continuamos con los servicios de información y de capacitación que ya veníamos prestando de manera online anteriormente. Finalmente, pues apuntar la creación como novedad en la nueva etapa de Extenda en la que nos encontramos ahora mismo, de la red Andalucía, que pone al servicio de las empresas andaluzas un equipo de consultores especializados en materia de internacionalización en cada una de las provincias andaluzas, con el objetivo pues, de identificar productos y servicios con potencial exportador y orientarlos hacia los mercados exteriores a través de nuestros servicios de información, formación, consultoría y promoción. Toda esta programación y toda esta información la tenéis disponible en nuestra página web. Y igualmente, pues todos los webinarios que vamos celebrando los grabamos y los colgamos en la misma web, en la zona de Extenda TV. Sin más, agradeceros vuestra presencia, damos comienzo a la jornada y vamos a ceder la palabra a Tomás. Hello, Thomas. Nice to meet you and welcome to Extenda. And it is a pleasure to have you here with us. Please, can go ahead. You can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Unfortunately, my Spanish is not good enough so that I could do the presentation in Spanish, but I will just say buenos días, señores y señoritas. But it's pretty much everything that I can really say in Spanish. So I will share my presentation with you so that we can start right with the presentation. So maybe first of all, I would like to give you an overview of what I'm going to be speaking about. First of all, of course, an introduction of my person and also information about what Be Smart City is so that you get a bit of background. Then I will talk about smart city development and in general, give you a bit market insights, and then I will speak about smart city development in Germany specifically. And last but not least, of course, I will summarize where challenges for cities are and where opportunities for international companies, especially here the Andalusian companies, lie in smart city development. So if I'm too fast, you have the opportunity, of course, to use the chat to also formulate questions that you might have. Of course, it would be perfect if you could do that in English so that I can understand the questions. Otherwise, I would encourage Laura and Raquel to maybe translate questions if they come in Spanish language. First, who am I? Well, my name is Thomas Müller, as introduced already. I'm co-founder and managing partner of Be Smart City and responsible on one hand for marketing and sales for our digital platform, but on the other hand also responsible for public sector consulting since we work with a lot of especially German cities and develop smart city strategies for them. But my background was not always the private sector. So I worked for 15 years at state, regional, and local level for cities and communities. So I know from the inside how communities act and know about the specialties, let's say, of city thinking. My background, I'm an economic geographer and also then did my MBA later on. First of all, regarding Be Smart City. Be Smart City is a large global smart city network and community. I will just hop through the content essentially because I don't want to do a sales pitch of our platform, of course. So we run a global smart city platform where we connect the different stakeholders among each other, whether it's cities among each other or cities with companies. And also we share best practices in terms of solutions that have been implemented. So it is a good opportunity for companies as well to, let's say, promote their solutions and to be more visible to the smart city community globally. We also run a smart city information portal, and we offer offline services, which is the public sector consulting primarily, but we also develop software tools for cities. We serve primarily cities and communities, but also, of course, solution providers, smart city event organizers, and the real estate sector, since this is one important aspect maybe to state early on. While in Europe we see that cities and communities pretty much are running the show in smart city development, if you look to Asia, for example, here the real estate industry is driving smart city development. And we now also see in Europe that smart district developments are growing fast, and the real estate companies are looking for a lot of smart city solutions to implement when developing new districts. Some key facts, as I said, we're the largest smart city network in community online, and we are also a partner platform of the United for Smart Sustainable Cities initiative of the United Nations, which we are very proud of. We currently have more than 13,000 members from 170 countries, and accessible on our platform are more than 700 smart city solutions. And these solutions have been implemented in more than 1,000 cities. And as I said, the intention behind the platform is not so much from, let's say, a business perspective in the first place, but rather something that I think we have all learned in the past years of smart city development is that we need to facilitate the transfer of knowledge and technology, because a lot of cities tend to try to reinvent the wheel, which is basically not necessary because there are so many good solutions out there. And the point is that a lot of cities that start with smart city development, they have no clue what's out in the market. So the platform provides that transparency so that if a city has a certain problem in a specific topic, they can use Smart City as kind of a solution search engine to really find solutions that fit their needs, which is then exactly the matchmaking that takes place between cities and solution providers. Yeah, and of course, one of the most important aspects, of course, is that everything that cities do, but also the intention behind our platform is, of course, to help cities achieve the sustainable development goals, and especially here it's goal 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. Why are we not doing the platform alone, but also have a lot to do with smart city consulting? Maybe for you as a background, the smart city market, although it has been around for, or the term smart city has been around for more than 20 years now, in Europe was pretty late in, let's say, market uptake. And what we have learned very fast was that a lot of cities have no clue what smart city really means. Therefore, we have developed under the patronage of the German federal government a guideline for smart city development, which was then published with a lot of renowned partners in Germany, and also later on published in Poland. Because cities needed education, they need to understand what a smart city really is and what the critical success factors are. And based on that guideline, we have been asked by many cities, or even, let's say, city subsidiaries like utility companies, to help them in smart city development. And this was kind of the entry point for us in our consulting work, which of course gave us a lot of insights of where really problems are within cities, what are their main topics that they pursue, the challenges they need to solve, and which is a good basis, of course, to provide insights for you as well on where German cities currently stand in terms of smart city development. What we have proposed in that publication is that cities need to undergo a constant strategic approach, and we always say that smart city is not a project from a city perspective, but rather it needs to be seen as a continuous change process, because the city needs to go, let's say, into competition with itself every single day to improve, livability, of course, for its citizens, but also to be economically more prosperous. And this is kind of a mindset and shift that cities need to understand when they engage in urban digital transformation. And as I said, we have published that guideline in Poland already. We have been working also with Taiwanese companies on creating an edition in Mandarin. So it was pretty much successful, and we're also working with the U4SSC to develop a second edition as an English version, but that is soon to be published and not yet available. I will skip through our projects, but just give you some background. We work with all the leading smart city events globally, also with a lot of cities, real estate companies, universities, to really have or create the knowledge that we can now share with you as well. And of course, this is the final element in my presentation of Be Smart City. I would like to encourage you all to join the platform. It is free of charge, so you can add your solutions for free and be more visible to international cities, but also to potential business partners from other countries. Well, now let's get to the main topic. And before we speak about the German market, I would of course like to give you a few backgrounds on the evolution of smart cities, which is hugely important to understand how cities act today in face of the 20 years that I mentioned of smart city development. Well, the common ground here is, of course, if you look from the top level perspective, that we face a lot of problems in cities. And you know the global trends that we have, strong urbanization, which then of course culminates in cities and leads to major problems, whether that's in the economic sense, in the social sense, or even the environmental problems that we see. 60% of the world population is estimated to live in cities by 2030. Cities, of course, as major growth centers, account for 60% of the global resource use, which is a huge problem. Cities also account for 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And last but not least, as growth centers, they are the most important actors in terms of economic development, contributing with 60% of global GDP. But the main thing that we have seen in the past years was that to really solve these challenges and to increase livability and prosperity, we need to act locally. All those challenges can only be solved if cities take the lead and implement smart solutions. Regarding the smart city market, let me quote two leading, let's say, internet experts, which is on one hand Vincent G. Cerf, who worked for Google and is one of the inventor of the internet actually, and also Steve Case, the former AOL CEO. They both said, and this was in 2017, that smart cities is the next big thing. Why is that so? Because cities essentially are the largest investors worldwide. They are the largest employer worldwide, and we have an extreme lack in terms of investment in critical infrastructure. So this acceleration into essentially the investment in digital technology and digital infrastructure makes it one of the most attractive growth markets worldwide. And to just give you an overview, we did analyze 7 market research reports on smart city development, and what we have seen is a compound annual growth rate of 20% from 2015 to 2026, which is a massive increase and kind of really shows how fast this market is expected to grow. And from 2015 to 2018, actually, that projected growth rate has been topped with 21%. So currently, everything that has been said really happens, which is a good sign, of course, for us all being in that market. If we look to the segments, we see a lot, of course, in industry 4.0 here with 25%, but we need to kind of leave that out a bit when we look to the smart city market. But we see huge portions of the market being in energy, in education, in security, of course, transportation, in smart buildings. And also in water and healthcare. I think even now the pandemic has led to a fast surge, especially in healthcare and education. I think we all have been affected over the past year from homeschooling to urban public health considerations. In terms of the region, it's pretty evenly spread among the developed world, let's say, with really 1/4 of the market being in Europe, around 1/3 of the market in North America, and another third in Asia. So essentially, these are the focal markets for solution providers when looking at internationalization of their activities. And looking back gives us a better understanding of the smart city market. I have said it has been around for more than 20 years, and the learnings of these 20 years can help us understand how cities act today. In the very early beginning, what we're talking about when we say smart city 1.0, the term smart city has basically been a marketing phrase provided by large technology companies, names like IBM or Cisco, that promised cities to become more innovative and more efficient. I think you all know the case of Barcelona, the city that worked in the early phase with Cisco, but then has largely shifted their smart city strategy. And exactly that development we can see in these different phases of smart city evolution, because after being driven by large companies, cities have pretty fast realized that they don't want to be dependent on smart city solution providers or large technology companies, but that they need to lead this development and really decide whom to work with. The classical factor here that we often see in Europe is the discussion around vendor lock-in. So cities pretty much shifted then between 2011 and 2014 their strategy more to a city-led development approach. Still in this early phase, it was pretty much technology-centric, and we have seen a lot of projects that Barcelona and many other cities of these early adopters have undertaken that have never been scaled citywide. So in a taxpayer sense, you would say it was a waste of money. This factor has massively led to the realization that smart cities are not developed on the foundation of technology, but rather the technology is just an enabler to really optimize processes and to better achieve city goals, while more running a citizen-centric and a locally co-created strategy. And this is the big shift that in Barcelona, for example, came with the appointment of Francesca Bria as CIO or CDO a couple of years back, when they really shifted their strategy 180 degrees away from the technology-centric perspective to a clearly citizen-centric perspective. And this is kind of the state-of-the-art development that cities today should follow when developing a smart city. But what we also see is that at this point, it will not stop. So if you look to cities like Amsterdam, for example, you will see that the future of smart city development lies in a more platform-based approach. On the one hand, we see urban data platforms and data management as one aspect when it comes to IoT and efficient let's say, steering and planning of city infrastructure and decision making. On the other hand, we see a strong trend towards collaboration platforms that support the kind of tapping into the collective intelligence of all citizens and stakeholders within a city, but working also with outside partners. But that might be more of the future. So currently, we need to focus on the citizen-centric perspective of smart city development. And one very prominent example that we have seen over the past months, of course, was the Waterfront Toronto project run by the Google subsidiary Alphabet. And here Sidewalk Labs kind of really messed up their plans. Of course, they said, okay, it was an economic decision based on the pandemic that they did not follow through with the project. But essentially, everyone in the industry knows that they did not regard all the data issues and the citizen needs. And this led to Sidewalk Labs stepping away from the project because of pressure from local government and citizens. So this example pretty much shows how important it is to take citizen needs and government needs into account when running smart city projects and implementing smart city solutions. I could cite other cases, for example, like Songdo in South Korea is a pretty much similar example that shows how important it is not to focus on technology itself, but rather on citizen needs. Basically, of course, smart cities is a very broad topic. If we look at it, we usually classify it in six dimensions, which have been developed by the Vienna Institute of Technology, and in these 6 areas, we have a lot of verticals. This is just a brief example of all the different verticals that cities could act in when developing a smart city. Essentially, here cities usually have the problem of, okay, where do we start? So the recommendation for cities usually is to have a holistic approach, really look at everything they need to do as a city to provide citizen services in a resilient way. But essentially, they need to focus on their most important challenges. And these challenges, of course, vary from city to city, since every city has or follows its own development path and can work on specific strengths, but also faces different problems that are more intense or less intense, depending on the social structure, economic structure within the different cities. The most important aspect is that cities usually have no clue about what solutions are out there in the market. Often they tend to look only to neighboring cities or maybe within their own region, but they don't know what happens in other countries. And what we see is that, of course, in several countries, like, for example, in Europe, in the Nordics or in the Netherlands, or even some parts of Spain, of course, cities are very much advanced in the implementation of smart city solutions. So as a German city, it would be helpful to look at these cases in specific topics, for example, mobility in the Netherlands, or environmental topics in the Nordics, or tourism in Spain, to learn from these solutions and to adapt and replicate solutions. But cities tend to, it's like with the horse, they are just focused into one direction, and even work in government silos. So that is a huge opportunity, of course, to achieve the transfer of information about solutions by speaking at different events and really being close to cities, where we see that cities really need to learn a lot. And the second point is they usually don't have the resources to fully assess available solutions in the market. So they need help in this respect. And this is what we often see in our consulting work, that they ask us, okay, so who are the best solution providers for us in this specific topic? This is something that, of course, is a good entry point then for solution providers to get in touch with local governments. And the last thing that that often hinders hinders cities from being successful is that a lot of smart city projects have been seen from more a marketing perspective and not a need-based or purpose-driven perspective. So a lot of activities, like in the case of Barcelona in the past, that were too technology-centric, they failed due to poor execution in terms of not recognizing the needs of their actual customers, which are citizens or even companies. And exactly this last aspect is one of the most important if we look forward to preconditions for smart city solutions, because terms like privacy or security are hugely important, especially in Europe when we speak about smart city development, and also from the citizen perspective, cost issues, the benefits are highly relevant. So this is something that usually cities need to take into account very, very urgently. When we speak about smart city development, we also say that we have like different spatial levels where solutions are implemented. And essentially, of course, we have like the citywide level where a lot of infrastructure solutions are implemented. But also cities need to look to a regional perspective, because in a lot of regions you have, for example, a regional transportation company or a regional energy provider that serves the full region, and you need the interconnections between the different cities. So especially in Spain, we also see a lot of smart region approaches, which is very important to have in mind. Besides then the city and region level, we see that a lot of smart city solutions, of course, need to be implemented in districts, especially when it comes to improving, for example, climate issues or improving mobility locally. Then we have a very strong district focus. But it then goes down also to the smart building topic, which is, of course, very prominent when it comes to resource efficiency issues or even climate issues in this respect. So here we see what we call the PropTech solutions, which are geared towards buildings. And then we lastly have the smart home, which in Europe is not that advanced. But if you look to Asia, there's a lot going on in this respect. We see this in a more corporate setting, in Germany as well from the building perspective, but not in terms of the private sector. Maybe in the healthcare we will see a lot of new solutions coming up. The telecare system of Barcelona is a fantastic example in this respect, but usually we tend to leave out the smart home market a bit. So we focus on citywide solutions and district solutions and the smart building solutions. So in industry terms, it's civic tech, everything that regards better engagement of citizens, then government technology, which is more for the process optimization of local governments, and PropTech when it comes to buildings. And here we see a lot of new business models, of course, coming up, which is a huge opportunity. In terms of market actors, just as a brief overview, I will focus now on the, let's say, the demand side. Of course, cities and local governments are the core elements, but we also see a lot of solution suppliers, real estate companies, and also investors looking for smart city solutions. So it's not only business to government, it's also business to business, especially the real estate industry will be very interesting for a lot of solution providers in the future. Summarizing what I just said and putting it into perspective, we can say smart city development is a very complex topic. The market is highly transparent, and it is a multi-stakeholder approach with a lot of regulations and conditions that need to be taken into account. Essentially, the lack of transparency is what makes it interesting for solution providers to engage with cities, because you need to transport your solution to cities, and the cities usually don't have the expert knowledge inside the city, so they can really learn fast by really showing them what is possible in terms of different solutions. I will talk about the avenues a bit later. This multi-stakeholder engagement is hugely important. So from the solution provider perspective, it is good to really establish trust and collaboration. This is exactly what you do today, for example, in this webinar. I mean, working with Extender, working with the government bodies, engaging in the different formats that are offered, whether that's participation in larger summits and conferences, whether that's kind of excursions now digitally, to explore new markets and to get in contact with potential clients. Here you can showcase, of course, your track record essentially, and build trust and form new partnerships, which is hugely important. Another aspect is, of course, in the B2B element. What we see is that all the large solution providers and the systems integrators are building up their ecosystems, especially when it comes to the final verticals in the system. Companies like SAP, like Microsoft, like Cisco, they all provide essential platforms, but they need to rely on solution providers from startup to SME, who can kind of bring in their solutions into their core platforms. So you should, of course, work with these larger companies to really be part of that ecosystem, because they will transport your solution as part of their overall bigger package to potential clients as well. So you don't need to do everything directly, but rather kind of what we call in English, go piggybacking, so sitting on the back of the horse essentially, and riding with them to the potential client. From the government perspective, what is important to realize are different regulations and conditions. You might all be well aware of the efforts you need to take in terms of procurement, whether it's tenders or procurement without having like huge tenders. It is a lot of work. So this always needs to be taken into account. And also you need to understand who are the right persons inside the cities who make actually the decisions about budget and investment. So from our perspective, summarizing those factors, it is a must really to showcase and also in some cases for an initial track record to pilot solutions. There are many ways on how that can be achieved. And the second thing is, which is hugely important, building that trust and collaboration, is to really bond with city officials. You need to create an advocate or ambassador for you inside the local government, because if a person inside sells you to his co-workers and also the decision makers, then it's much easier to get in early on. And we know a lot of cases. I mean, having worked for 15 years in local government, I know how procurement works and tender processes work. If you're early in this match and you are kind of the preferred solution that they want to try, then the tender will be kind of formulated the way that the likelihood of winning it will be given. So this creates kind of this first mover advantage in this way. So being close to a city and having successfully, for example, run a pilot gives you the momentum to also have a very likely success rate in a following tender for this specific solution. But that was just the basics regarding the smart city market, because I think it is usually very important to reflect the issues. And one aspect maybe to point out, because it's in Europe very, very important and very much discussed nowadays, is the fact what we learned in this initial phase of smart city development. If I look to Smart Cities 1.0, which was tech company driven, this fear of vendor lock-in is something that in Europe is really promoted very fast and urgently by the European Commission and also by national governments. So everything that happens, for example, in Germany in regard to smart cities is there it is strongly advised by national and also state governments to either work open source or at least have open APIs in terms of realizing technology and data sovereignty of local governments. And the second aspect, of course, is cybersecurity and data protection. So these preconditions are something that every solution provider needs to take into account when working with German cities, but also, from my perspective, with European cities in general. This trend is something, and here I reflect again what happened in Toronto with the Google project. This trend will continue as well in other markets in the future. So this is our estimate that this technology-centric perspective that we still see in the US, but also see in Asia, will kind of loosen a bit, and the citizen perspective and the importance of ownership of data and data protection, that this trend will continue also in international markets in the future. So when implementing your solutions and even on the contract level, you need to be aware that cities will negotiate hard, that the data ownership will be with the city. But that just as another important factor from our perspective. Now coming to the smart city market in Germany. I will give you a bit of history. So Germany is kind of a late mover in smart city development, and the German national, let's say, IT business association, the Bitkom, did a first study in 2019, which was called the Bitkom Smart City Atlas. And here we were one of the partners of this project, and we have assessed 50 cities in terms of their smart city progress, how they start to become smarter. And it was pretty much clear that at this point, only a few cities really had clear strategies or digital agendas. The core topics that these cities had was of course e-government, because we have national laws that they need to fulfill by the end of 2022. So this was one core topic. Everything in let's say providing access to government services for citizens and companies is a huge topic in Germany. Mobility, energy and environment. These were like the main topics for most cities in 2019. Essentially, still, these are one of the most common topics today as well. The Bitkom has advanced that study, and since 2020, they do a yearly assessment of the 82 largest German cities in terms of smart city development. What has become clear in this smart city index is that I think it's a very good source of information for you as well. It has become clear that the cities are very much stepping up their efforts, and that, for example, the data topic that I just talked about, the IoT topics like open data, the use of data in urban development, also climate resilience, have been very important over the past years, especially when it comes to air quality and mobility, a huge discussion Europe-wide in the past years. And here the cities are acting pretty fast to implement smart solutions. The German government is supporting the smart city development with a huge national effort. It's called the Smart Cities Model Projects initiative, which focuses on urban development and digitization. It is aimed at cities and regional city consortiums with 750 million initially. It was stepped up due to the pandemic crisis with a lot of, I think, up to 830 million. So it's a huge budget, and they wanted to fund 65 model projects in Germany that develop and implement smart city solutions. For each city, they have a budget of 15 to 17.5 million euro, which is 90% co-funded by the government. And we had already 2 rounds of selections. In the first call in 2019, 13 model projects have been selected. The second call, 32. And then we have like the third call, which just ended a week ago on March 14. And the decision for this phase, I think we will have close to, let's say, between 150 and 200 applications in this final third round. The decision will follow in July 2021. So you see there's a lot of money in the market when it comes to this national support program, which we have seen in several other countries as well, which leads to a very, very broad, let's say, effort of German cities in, of course, taking part in that program, meaning they think about developing their own smart city strategies. And this is the spread of how important smart city strategies are, is exactly what leads to an uptake of the overall market in Germany. And not only the big cities, but also mid-sized and small cities are very much engaged in these projects. So from our perspective, we usually say the smart city concept, although the name city is in it, it's not something only for the large metropolises, but rather it's like for every city, because digitization affects every community, no matter of size, no matter of urban context. So we see really cities like one example is Bad Hersfeld in the state of Hesse in Germany, city with 30,000 population, having implemented so many smart city solutions, being one of the first movers in Germany, which is very interesting. Or in Romania, for example, we have the city of Alba Iulia, also similar size, more than 100 smart city solutions already in implementation. So don't think about only the large cities when looking for potential clients. I will just give you a brief overview so that you can see what happens in Germany. This is just the second funding round with the 32 model projects. And you see a spread across Germany with very strong presence, of course, in the most populous state in North Rhine-Westphalia, which shows that in every part of Germany, smart city projects are developing. And there is not only this national initiative. When you look to the state level, and this is the case of North Rhine-Westphalia, the state where we also are located, you have this rounds of the federal ministry, which is the Ministry of Interior and Building, the BME. This is the abbreviation that you can see in the legend of that map. In those first 2 rounds, there were several projects being selected, but also the state has its own program called the Digital Model Regions. And there we have like five regions that are stepping up smart city development and e-government activities. So you see that this national effort is supported pretty much from a statewide effort. And these state-run programs we see in different states. The state of Baden-Württemberg in southern Germany, for example, which is, I don't know if you see my cursor, but it's in the southwest of Germany, they have their own program. The same is for Bavaria, currently running their own program, and also in northern Germany we see state-run programs. So this whole smart city movement in Germany essentially is stepping up pretty fast with a lot of support. And currently we are also in the preparation of the operational programs of the EU funding. The next funding phase starts soon, and what we see is that a lot of these funding schemes will be directed into digitization and smart city development. So there is a lot upcoming, even from the Regional Development Fund of the European Union, which also will be interesting projects for companies as well to engage with cities. And then, of course, we see initiatives driven by different actors. Here, an example of a regional initiative in the Ruhr region called the CityTech Ruhr Challenge. We also supported this challenge, and it was geared at international smart city startups to solve predefined challenges from cities from our region, the cities of Bochum, Bottrop, and Hagen. And we had more than 100 international startups from 27 countries apply for that specific challenge to pilot their solutions in these 3 cities. They got a small budget of 10,000 euros for the piloting phase. But essentially, the 3 final startups that have been selected really did a very good job and run successful pilots. And all 3 cities are now considering a scaling of these pilots to a citywide level. And also the region is supporting the transfer inside our region, which is 51 cities essentially. So we're one of the largest metropolitan areas in Europe, and I mean that's a huge opportunity for these startups, of course, to be visible with their solutions and also to have a great testimonial from inside the region to then scale from this region to the state level and cities or other cities in Germany. There are many other initiatives. You might have heard about also the Solution for Cities call that was issued just a few months ago as well. Also here, cities from Germany and other European countries were looking for smart city solutions. So a lot of these initiatives are currently ongoing, where solution providers and also startups can participate to really create their first track record and to be more visible for the cities. Summarizing the German smart city market, it can be said that the market is growing fast and represents a huge opportunity, especially when it comes to European countries, because they all need to adhere to GDPR and any other regulations out there. So there's a higher trust in that respect. All the financial incentives and subsidies that I have just explained to you facilitate this development. And one other factor has largely contributed over the past year, which is the pandemic. And the cities have realized we need to act now, whether that's in education, in healthcare, or any other digital service to really increase the resilience of the city and to kind of foster the prosperity or secure the welfare inside the city. This has led to massive increase. What we also see that cities really learn this need of education, what smart city really is, that we have supported, for example, with our guideline, really now takes place inside the cities. So they drive cultural change, especially openness to innovate with partners from industry, to work with startups, for example, and also to really create the structure to do this in a faster way than it was in the past. This openness is a huge opportunity. So you should really follow, especially the media, about what cities are very active in smart city development for Germany. I have given you a few sources in this presentation. So follow the model projects, follow the cities in the Smart City Index, and also, of course, use the general media about finding out who's active, what initiatives are currently running, and then it's a good way to really interact with the cities, because we see also that when implementing the proper strategies, cities also implement proper structures. So you will have a contact point in the form of a CDO or CIO running the show, or sometimes they're called commissioner for digitization. So these people are usually the best to approach when it comes to information about solutions. And yeah, the initiatives that I mentioned, especially when we look to startups and international companies, is look to these challenges and initiatives to be present. Take part in initiatives also of Extenda in cooperation with other partners like the German economic development corporations. We do a lot of tours as well on different events where we get or bring German cities into contact directly with smart city companies. We did that in 2019. Unfortunately, the pandemic came in between, but in 2019 we went with a delegation from the rural region to the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, and had meetings with several Spanish smart city companies to really exchange information about solutions. So use these initiatives to really engage. But be aware of the preconditions that I have explained several times during this presentation. It is about meeting the needs of cities, and they are very, very sensitive when it comes to data, when it comes to privacy issues. So these aspects are hugely important, and this is, from my perspective, the key takeaways when it comes to the smart city market in Germany. So on one hand, a huge opportunity. On the other hand, of course, there are preconditions you need to take into account. But the, let's say, opportunities currently really overweigh the negative sides, which is kind of the difficulty in working with governments. But that's about it from my presentation. I hope it wasn't too much. I know there's a lot of input in that respect, but I think what is more important than really doing a lot of slides is to answer your questions that you might have, because this is what really helps you. So I would like to open up the discussion. Maybe I leave the slides currently if someone wants to go back on a certain slide, but maybe Laura or Rachel, if one of you could moderate a bit whether we have questions, then I'm happy to.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. It's been super interesting. And yes, we have a few questions here made by Mr. Luis Antonio Camacho. He says, Dankeschön für die gute Erklärung in German. And then he asked, what could be a good approach for retrieving cities' needs in order to propose a technologic or methodologic solution to the need?
Yeah, that is a good question, but also a very difficult question. When we work with the cities in developing smart city strategies, we usually see that they have no clue essentially what their largest challenges are or what potentials are that they need to tackle. Of course, they have a general understanding, but they don't have this prioritization. And this is something that currently, with the implementation of the smart city strategies, changes, because due to limited resources, not only in budget, also in terms of personnel, they can only follow a certain amount of projects every year. So that means they need to prioritize. And although this varies between cities, I can say that currently everything that happens around mobility is a really huge topic. So creating what we usually call mobility as a service, so an integrated system, especially when it comes to strengthening public transportation, along with, let's say, micro-mobility options that are more sustainable on the first and last mile. This is one thing, creating these platforms. And then the whole environmental issues are pretty much among the top issues that we see. From the economic conditions, like we see in Spain as well. I mean, if you look to what Red ES is doing in Spain, similar, we have a lot of cities in Germany that where tourism is one of, or even the cultural attractivity is one of the most important economic aspects. So solutions for inner city revitalization, tourism solutions, hybrid solutions for culture and leisure. These are topics that we currently see are pretty much strong in need, let's say. Maybe the next option is, of course, the whole real estate part, which is building topics with the whole resource efficiency. So these we see currently as the most important aspects that are directly geared towards increasing, let's say, livability, but also economic prosperity. And on the other hand, we have this whole e-government issue. Of course, everything digital here is something that cities are looking for very, very intensively. And a new topic which has been promoted strongly also by the national initiatives and the EU is to really make that shift towards more citizen-centric solutions, meaning cities need to foster citizen participation. So a lot is really into participation platforms as well, or digital ways to interact between citizens and the local government. That may be just an overview of the topics that we currently see, besides the technical infrastructure, of course, that goes along from IoT platforms or urban data platforms into the let's say digital twin solutions, which of course is kind of a solid foundation for smart city development overall.
Thank you very much. I think that somebody would prefer to make a question orally. Miguel Ángel Martín, would you like to speak?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Guten Tag, Herr Müller. First of all, thank you for your presentation. Okay. I have one question because my company has a headquarters in Germany, okay? But basically, we are developing the smart city concepts and projects here in Spain, but we want to enlarge this in Germany, okay? We're based in Stuttgart and Leipzig, okay? I was checking your platform and see that you are, with your platform, you are able to connect interested company with cities, okay? And we are based mainly in the sector of the citizens and communities, okay? In Spain, more in the tourism sector, but I think this, as I see in your presentation, this sector of enlarged communities in Germany is very interesting right now. No, correct me if I'm wrong.
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay, then I think we can have I'm going to try to send you any message during these days. I'm putting contact with my colleagues in Germany, and then we can talk directly in German. Okay, and I think we can find any synergy to join your platform and start thinking in things. Yeah, very interesting presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That would be perfect. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you also answered the second part of the question that Mr. Camacho asked regarding the issue that the cities have to implement solutions that are citizens' needs oriented. So how could they get inside before the budgets are created and the bids are coming out?
Well, the budget thing is usually very difficult to yeah, let's say to or at least to find out information on that. The point is that regarding the needs, of course, it is important to look at what the city is really doing. So following the media in that respect, also checking, of course, the city website to see in which areas they act, but also following the press regarding individual cities, give a clue about what really is happening. But it is very difficult to get that information. This is why I kind of also cited the Smart City Index, for example, or also the Smart City Model projects, because you will find publications there. For example, on the Smart City Model Project website, that gives you an overview of what the cities have planned. So you can see what they in what areas they would like to act. So this gives a good indicator of what cities are looking for when it comes to solutions. And also the Smart City Index shows in what areas they are already active. So this might give a clue about the direction that a city is taking. It is, of course, not a, let's say, satisfying answer for you, because there is not that information. That would be great if we all had that information. But also from my experience in local government, I have heard so many times the sentence, "We know what the citizens want," which is kind of a top-down attitude that you have often in local government, which needs, well, this is why this cultural shift is needed, but for many cities, this is a long way to go. So essentially, they see only from a top-down perspective on the challenges of the city, and they just implement solutions in that respect. So it's not always the case that they have already this participative strategy, but rather in often a very top-down strategy. I think this is the same in Spanish cities, but yeah, we see that this cultural shift is coming slowly only. So I think in this respect, engaging with the city directly and then finding out the core topics of their smart city strategy is a good way to go.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, there is another question. Do you know about any citizen culture-oriented project recently being implemented through smart city projects?
Well, not directly citizen culture oriented. I think what is a common denominator for all German cities, and also our urban planning system is, of course, to have equal living conditions in each part of the country. So topics like equality are usually, or designing it in an inclusive way, are topics that every city takes into account. Whether the focus is more in this respect is it differs between cities. For example, in the city of Bochum that we just advised in the smart city strategy, they create kind of a map of services for people with disabilities in the city. So we see a lot of trends in that respect, or we see specific initiatives for at-risk youth in terms of digital inclusion, for example, to provide them access to services, to infrastructure. So there are a lot of different projects in that respect, but it is a very broad category. So I think in most cities, a lot of projects in this area are run. Maybe to give you just an impression out of our consulting work, we worked with the city of Essen, the city of Gelsenkirchen, the city of Oberhausen, and the city of Bochum in the past year. And interesting to see is that when you assess what the city is doing in terms of smart city projects, these cities, which were all larger German cities, between 200,000 and 500,000 population, they have more than 200 to 300 digitalization projects running. So that means they cover nearly all smart city topic. Of course, in some aspects, it's smaller pilot projects. In other aspects, it's real big infrastructure projects. So what I would like to express by this is, although you might not find information about, let's say, a certain focal point, it doesn't mean that the city doesn't need a specific solution, because about 90% of all these projects, you will never hear anything, but the city is implementing them. So I think this is a strong argument for really getting into contact with the city CDO or CIO to really present your solution, to find out where the city is active. And I think this will be the best verification of whether you can work with the city, or whether the city said, okay, it's interesting, but not for us.
Thank you very much. One last question that I would like to ask myself. Which is the most important congress or trade fair in Germany for smart cities?
The most important what?
Congress or trade fair.
I didn't get that. Again?
Oh yeah, sorry. I think that maybe I don't have a good connection. The most important trade fair.
Ah, the most important trade fair.
Or congress.
Yeah, that's there are two usually that that can be mentioned. One is the so-called Smart Country Convention, which is organized by the Bitkom, so the IT industry association that I mentioned earlier. I think the link is www.sccon, so SCCON. I think, yeah, but you will find it on the internet. It usually takes place in October or November. And the second one is the Smart City Solutions Expo, which is part of the Intergeo. Also takes place usually in autumn, often in September or October. But these are the biggest ones we have in Germany. So, but from an international perspective, I would say the Smart City or the Smart Country Convention is the most important one, but you cannot compare it with the Smart City Expo World Congress in Barcelona, of course. But there are other important expos in Europe that are even larger than the German one. So if you look at Nordic Edge, for example, or others, there are some other interesting ones as well.
Great. Thank you very much. I think that there is no more questions so far, so maybe we can finish. Laura, what do you think?
Yes. Okay, it's been a pleasure for us to have you, Thomas, and please keep in touch with us, and whatever you need, we're here to help you, ¿no? Bueno, decirle a las empresas, agradecer vuestra presencia, esperamos que haya sido de vuestro interés, recordarles que vamos a colgar la grabación del vídeo en nuestra página web, y que igualmente les enviaremos un pequeño cuestionario de valoración que agradeceríamos mucho que nos completaran, ¿vale? Así que nada, esperamos, lo dicho, que os haya resultado interesante y que salga mucho fruto de esta conferencia. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Herr Müller, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you. And also, if the companies have questions or you have additional questions, of course, you have my contact information. So I'm happy to answer also questions by email. So thank you for attending. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.